Sustainable forest management and meeting its obligations under the Low Carbon Development Strategy remain key areas of focus in Guyana. This year, as outlined in the country's national budget, measures will continue to be put in place to effectively manage the rate of deforestation. Guyana will also continue to advocate more ambitious emission reduction targets by industrialized countries and push for a global agreement on climate change by 2015. Also engaging the attention of the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment is the implementation of a $1 billion cleanup initiative that will see major efforts being made to rid Georgetown and other parts of the country of garbage. This week on El Dorado Shines, we will delve deeper into these proposed measures as outlined in the 2014 national budget as we move to update you on what impact these programs will have on every Guyanese and the country as a whole.
By 2030, flooding has been estimated to cost $150 million annually, and extreme events such as the flooding of 2005 could result in $0.8 billion in losses, affecting 320,000 people. The need to identify and develop land away from the coastal plain has been included in the Low Carbon Development Strategy as hinterland adaptation measures to be undertaken in the period 2012 to 2015.
2013 was a notable year of progress for activities under the GRIF, which is a fund for the financing of activities identified under Guyana's Low Carbon Development Strategy. Minister of Finance Dr. Ashni Singh, in his presentation of the national budget, said a total of 4 GRIF projects with a combined approximate value of $30 million were in their implementation phases.
In the wake of the intensification of the adverse impact of climate change, government continues to forge ahead with our innovative, climate-resilient and low-carbon approach to economic development, backed by our unwavering commitment to good forest governance and stewardship.
The Honourable Minister mentioned the GRIF projects, and one of them is Resilience Strategy and Action Plan, National Resilience Strategy and Action Plan, which I personally very much welcome. The coastal zone has not been on the radar of a lot of persons. The coastal zone is an important aspect of our livelihoods, of our survival, and our survival in terms of our protection, because obviously the elements of nature and climate change would have an effect on the coastal. The coastal zone is where a majority of our activities are concerned and are being carried out. The EPA has the authority to authorize a lot of the rice mills and lumber yards and all these development activities along the coast. And if we don't ensure the protection of the coastal resources and the coastal zone, well, we are in for dire straits. So the allocations, or at least the commitment by the government to deal with that is very much welcome.
Proposed budgetary allocations will enable the Environmental Protection Agency to reactivate several of its programs, some of which focus strongly on the protection and management of resources along Guyana's coastal zones.
The EPA has an integrated coastal zone management program, which has been dormant for a while. So with this support from government, we're going to sort of resuscitate this program. We have an action plan that is sort of outdated. So we're in the process right now of reviewing and reviving that action plan and develop what I call a coastal resource map. So we're able to identify what are the major coastal uses, what are the coastal natural resources that we have, and ensure that we work towards protecting those resources.
Guyana is making more lands and resources available for mineral production and investments in the natural resources sector. These initiatives are being pursued in keeping with the country's commitment to protect the environment.
The Guyana Forestry Commission is playing a lead role in the push for sustainable forest management. This year, the agency intends to intensify efforts to protect the country's forest resources and further build on the achievements of the last few years.
For the year 2014, one of the key activities of the GFC is in the area of reducing emissions and deforestation and forest degradation, plus aspects including sustainable forest management. It is a program of work that we started since about 2009 and that we've continued to work on over the past few years. In 2014, it is a priority area because many of the things we've been working on are now coming together. Certainly in the aspects that have to do with the monitoring, reporting, and verification system, as well as aspects on related matters like community MRVs and reference level policy areas that relate to work we do in the National Forest Plan and National Forest Policy Statement, and in the broader context of resources management as an overarching objective.
Over the past year, Guyana continued to work at the multilateral level to establish a reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation framework that sets the stage for future payments for forest conservation and sustainable forest management.
In the year 2014, in many regards, actually, we'll be working on several aspects of REDD+. Directly on the areas that focus on forest carbon, but also indirectly on those areas that are more related to the National Forest Plan and the National Forest Policy Statement.
Under the $7 million institutional strengthening project, significant progress was made towards the development of Guyana's first national-scale monitoring, reporting, and verification system, MRV.
In 2014, it will mark the commencement of Phase 2 of the work on the monitoring, reporting, and verification system, which we abbreviate as MRV. The MRV system was developed in 2009, and it first ran for 3 years, which was the initial development stage. So that was from 2010 to 2013. We have been able to successfully implement not only the development aspects, but routine reporting aspects, which form part of the annual reporting requirements that support the LCDS, the Low Carbon Development Strategy. As some may know, for Guyana to receive payment for service from the government of Norway for forest carbon, there is a need for there to be an accountable and a transparent reporting system. And that system is the MRV. Basically, what is done every year is that we are able to report on the extent of forest cover that remains at the end of every annual period. And the MRV, as in its most simplistic sense, gives that product, delivers those results.
A major accomplishment over the implementation of Phase 1 of the MRV has been the establishment of a national-scale system for monitoring forest cover.
Many countries are setting up what they call subnational systems at community level, at pilot scale, perhaps at project level. What Guyana sought to do, which was very ambitious even in 2009 when things were quite developed, but we started off with the ambition of developing a national scale system of monitoring forest cover. So whether the forest belongs to the state or whether it belongs to Amerindian titled villages or whether it's allocated for protected areas, we monitor all forest. And I say that that is perhaps the most major accomplishment because I believe it is perhaps the only MRV at national scale in the world that is done at high resolution, which is 5 meters resolution coverage. So for 3 annual periods, we've been able to deliver reports on what the state of the forest is in Guyana. And to report not only in a general way, but specifics in terms of what is causing the loss of forest in some cases, and where those changes are occurring. And one of the main resultant from that process is that the forest losses remained very, very low over Guyana's history, including over the past 3 years.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment is creating conditions for the responsible and sustainable exploitation of the country's natural resources. Operators are encouraged to mine with the environment in mind.
Plans are underway to have the international community become more familiar with Guyana's success in sustainable forest management and the country's work on climate change.
We need to publicize what we've been doing in Guyana larger, certainly at the scale of the region and also the international level. Our plans include not only going out to more communities across Guyana to show them how perhaps efforts at the community level can contribute to national scale MRV, but certainly as well how what we do at national scale can be transferred to community level. So that is at the community level. At the level of the international scale and the international scene, there are plans to hold a side event at some of the major meetings which usually are held at the level of the United Nations to present on the work we've done on monitoring forest cover and also on the strategic side of Guyana's work on climate change. I know that at the regional level as well, we're looking to contribute more and more to international publications at the level of the region and also at the international level. We've even been considering putting forward some of the new methods we've developed in scientific peer-reviewed journals, so that what we've developed can not only be replicated in a sense of process and product in terms of what we give as the final product, but certainly in terms of the methods, the scientific applications of the technology we've been able to pilot and test and to roll out at national scale.
While Guyana has made significant progress in effectively managing the rate of deforestation and establishing sound, sustainable forest management policy, this success has not been without its challenges.
One of the challenges we faced was trying to find ways in which we can use our existing resources for additional purpose. So in some ways, it can be viewed as adding more pressure on existing human as well as physical resources. That was a challenge, but I think we've been able to stretch existing resources to meet those new needs. An additional challenge we face is being able to have a kind of sustainable mechanism to assure that when we need resources, we can get them. So mainly I refer to satellite imagery. To conduct assessment on forest cover, we have to have satellite imagery cover every year. And this has to be assured because without this, we have no input data to base our work. And this is not an easy thing always, because Guyana is a country of very high cloud cover. And it really is a huge task to be able to secure the quality and the kind of satellite imagery we need to be able to do accurate and precise assessments. So sometimes it involves being able to task imagery for sometimes 3 months to get what you need for the areas that you're interested in covering. And it is an even bigger challenge because we're not just looking to do an assessment for a part of Guyana, but for the whole of Guyana. So I would say perhaps that might be the third challenge, that we started off with a very ambitious objective, which is to map forest cover for the whole of Guyana. It was achieved, the objective was achieved, but it was certainly more difficult than had we set out to do a kind of subnational activity. If one were to ask if we would have done it any differently, my response would be absolutely not.
We must do everything we can to keep our surroundings clean.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
A record $1 billion has been allocated in the 2014 national budget for an anti-litter program that will result in the capital city, all other towns and rural villages implementing a Clean Up My Guyana community action plan.
The proposed allocation of $1 billion to the sector is significant for the country in two respects. First of all, it shows a tangible commitment of the government towards addressing this long-standing issue of solid waste management in Guyana. And more importantly, it shows in my opinion, a keen understanding of the complexity of the solid waste management issue that we have in Guyana.
The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, welcomes this announcement by the Honourable Minister, Dr. Ashley Singh. And you would recognize that our current situation in our country, dire straits where it concerns solid waste management and garbage in particular across the country and in Georgetown. So we are very, very much elated the fact that he's made this announcement, which basically supports what we've had in plan over the last couple of months and now moving into implementation.
The EPA has been moving rapidly to implement measures under the new litter prevention regulations, which has seen, among other developments, the recruitment and identification of litter wardens.
Right now we're in the process, and over the last couple of weeks I've been talking about the implementation of that regulations. Now we're actually a step ahead. We have the litter wardens will soon be in place. In another couple of days' time, the litter wardens will be recruited. We've done the interview process, so it's now a matter of issuing the what you call the offer letter or offer of employment. So in another couple of weeks, another week or two, we should have them on board, and they'll be obviously in Georgetown. We're also some of that money is obviously will be used to fan out to the the NDCs in the rural areas of Guyana, and we've started having discussions and outreaches with these NDCs. Up to last week we were in Berbice and number 52 village to Crabble Creek, and so those two NDCs in there are very, very open and welcome to the initiative. And so we've actually provided some information, some guidance on what the regulation entails and what are their responsibilities.
As business operators, we need to be responsible.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
Measures being implemented by the EPA and its partners are already beginning to bear fruit, with cleanup efforts already underway in several locations across the city.
And if you take a drive around Georgetown and the areas like, for example, Stabrook, you would recognize a vast change there, right in front by the police outposts in those areas. The garbage that is normally piled up there has been significantly, decreased, and is actually being picked up on a regular basis now. If you drive down Regent Street and some other, like Church Street, for example, in front of by Globe, the old Globe Cinema, you will see where those were known dumping sites. They've actually showed evidence of being, cleaned up at least on a regular basis. You're still having effects where the vagrants are making their efforts, but that will have to be obviously changed over time.
Several stakeholders are part of this massive effort to clean up the country and are in the process of undertaking a citywide cleanup program set to begin shortly.
The EPA, the Ministry of Local Government, the NDI, which is National Drainage and Irrigation Authority, Public Works Authority, we're working on meeting actually this week to develop a plan, an action plan actually, to go and do a cleanup, citywide cleanup, a complete cleanup of the city. So all these illegal dump areas and all the bad-looking places will join together and clean it up. So some of the funds that is allocated will go to that initial cleanup. So basically, we're using the thing. Cleanliness would attract cleanliness. Dumps will attract more garbage. So we start with that premise of cleaning up the place. We start with a clean slate, and then the litter wardens will then monitor and ensure that those places are kept clean.
The EPA believes the nature of littering and the volume of solid waste being generated has dramatically changed over the last 10 years, and having legislation to keep up with this transformation is critical.
The solid waste management issues that we face today are not the same solid waste management issues that we faced 10, 20 years ago. Because as a result of the growth in industrial and in commercial and development activities, particularly in the city areas, the volume of waste has changed, and also the type of waste that we have to deal with has changed. And the challenge with that from a legislative standpoint is the law has not evolved and it has not developed to address the changes in the waste that we have to control in Guyana now. And that is the biggest challenge that we face currently.
The implementation of new regulations and efforts to inspire the public to stop dumping garbage are key factors in addressing what the EPA believes is now a dire situation.
So we don't want people to actually go and dump. We want people to be prevented from doing that. So if you see the little warriors and their presence openly in blue and navy blue, for that matter, as EPA colors, they will be recognized, and so people would not want to necessarily engage in the activity. Now, to deal with the ones who are sneaky, then there are some investigative procedures and tact that the little wardens will be trained in, that we will use to identify and what we call covert surveillance and those kind of things to identify people. And in addition to where the partnership comes in with, I spoke of the cameras, Ministry of Home Affairs camera, the businesses cameras, those will not be publicizing them, but we'll know where these are, and we can actually go and monitor these cameras for evidence gathering.
In the wake of the 2005 floods, we've seen a proliferation of all forms of solid waste. Our drainage canals are flooded with every conceivable form of waste, whether it be styrofoam boxes, plastic bottles. It's reached crisis level in my opinion.
Authorities, while first seeking to encourage a change in behavior, intend to fully enforce the litter prevention regulations, both at the level of communities and businesses.
Whatever applies to the businesses will apply to residents as well, which is the education and awareness. We have to do that. We have to bring people to understand what they're doing, right, so that they can inculcate good practices. For example, our EIT, Education, Information and Training Division, they are tasked with actually going around to communities and making presentation on what they can do with recycle, reduce, reuse, those kind of practices. So they reduce the garbage generated at the household level, and then what can they do with things like composting, the vegetable matter and stuff like that, and reuse it for garden purposes and so on. And then with the enforcement, I mean, nobody has the excuse of not ensuring that they protect, not only putting out the garbage, but they have to protect the garbage. Protect it from the vagrants, protect it from the animals that are patrolling the streets. So if the truck doesn't come, they need to keep it secured. So those are the things we want to encourage residents to do. And the little wardens will have that authority and that power to ensure that that is done.
The basic offense under the litter prevention regulations is depositing litter in public. That carries a penalty of $50,000 in the case of a private individual and $100,000 in the case of a commercial entity. Now, litter is defined very widely under the regulations. It encompasses solid waste, liquid waste, a combination of both, sand, dirt, derelict vehicles, dead animals. So essentially the regulations envisage that virtually anything can be considered litter. And the penalty attached to that is $50,000 for a private individual and $100,000 in the case of a commercial entity. There are also other aspects of littering that are catered for under the regulations. For instance, if you're the owner or operator of a form of public transportation and you do not provide a receptacle within the vehicle within which passengers can deposit litter, then that is an offense under the regulations, and that carries with it a penalty of $15,000.
A draft solid waste management bill will soon be tabled in the National Assembly, which seeks to address the issue of solid waste by taking into account all contributing factors.
What that bill seeks to do is that it seeks to address the issue of solid waste management from a holistic perspective. Currently, there is no single piece of legislation that addresses solid waste management from a holistic perspective in terms of from the complete life cycle of waste. The proposed bill actually addresses solid waste management from the actual generation of waste to the collection, the transportation, even the recycling, and ultimately the disposal of waste. So the bill essentially creates numerous offenses, more offenses than currently exist, and the bill also creates stricter licensing mechanisms for instance, landfill operations, which are becoming pretty plentiful throughout the city and further afield. So the bill really focuses on strengthening the enforcement capabilities of the agency and by extension local government and the ministry.
The EPA is urging all stakeholders and citizens across the country to get on board and fully support the Clean Up My Country efforts. Blame and finger-pointing, the agency says, will not solve the problem, but rather swift and decisive action by all Guyanese.
The purpose of this initiative is not necessarily to encroach on the mandate of any other institution. I know there's been a lot of talk about that in the media, and it's not necessarily to apportion blame to anyone, because frankly speaking, there's enough blame to go around for everyone. There's enough blame for the mayor and city council, there's enough blame for local government, there's enough blame for the NDCs, there's enough blame for us at the agency, there's enough blame for the citizens at large. But apportioning blame does not actually address the issue that we're facing. We have a national problem, and we've all contributed to the problem by not addressing the problem realistically and in a holistic perspective. So this initiative really seeks to bring everyone on board, not just the general citizenry, but us at the agency, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, local government, the NDCs, mayor and city council. We all have to come together for this initiative to actually be effective.
Check us out on the internet for this and every episode of Eldorado Shines. Just go to YouTube, search for Eldorado Shines and start watching, or like us on Facebook and receive instant updates.
You've been watching Eldorado Shines. Do join us again next week for another program. Until then, do remember we all have a role to play in protecting the environment.